Hello you guys, this is Rachel Kirkland here, the Modern Shaman. Thanks for being with me for another YouTube video of the week. If you're new to the channel, I am glad you're here and I would love to invite you to go to my website. There's a lot of further information about just resources if you are seeking guidance during this time in your life. I offer private sessions for healing as well as seership, traditional psychic seership, whether it be past life or future probabilities. Again, as well as the shamanic healing and soul retrieval and kind of deeper ceremonial aspects of the shamanic healing practices. Also, I have mentoring programs if you are in this line of growth and would like to continue your evolutionary process with a little bit of a push or encouragement on your journey, as well as offering the online teaching program. I probably talk about it all the time, but I really believe in it. It's something that I developed over the many years, really over just being me, over years of being me, of growing up, seeing premonitions and feeling energy and having to learn how to navigate in this world with these gifts and not feel like you're going crazy. And then also how to get a sense of training them, developing them into precision instruments, and then working in this field in so many different genres of what we're capable of doing with our multidimensional gifts. All right, here's the question. This question actually came in from a live stream, from a Friday morning live stream. Also, I should have announced that. If you have yet to join our little party on Friday mornings, every other Friday, on Facebook Live, I do a live streaming Q&A time, which is kind of like this channel, except it's live. So you get your questions answered like that, which is awesome. And the community is there. There are other like-minded souls. So it's a great little resource to find other individuals that are into this, that are developing their gifts, that are standing in their gifts. A lot of people that are on that live stream are practicing healers and psychics themselves, mediums, or those that are in the field. And it's just a great resource. So if you have yet to do that, go on my Facebook page and connect for the live Q&As every other Friday. And then, and it's at 10 a.m. Central Standard Time. But this question came in from there, and I told her, I was like, sorry I didn't get to your question this week. I'll put it in the file for the YouTube videos because I felt like it was a good kind of broad question that a lot of people could benefit from. So all that being said, here's the question this week. She said, "Hi Rachel, I was wondering how universal law applies when you're going through a dark night of the soul. Like when you're going through releases of negative energy and are in a very depressed state where it's almost impossible to hold positive thoughts. Will those negative energies that you release boomerang back to you? Thank you for all that you do. You are so amazing." Okay. I love this question. I love so many questions, but I love this. I just think it's relatable, and I want to talk about a few of the terms and go through some terminology first that she used in case you're not familiar with it or you haven't heard that phrase. In our kind of new age community, just like all spiritual communities, we tend to have our little favorite catchphrases, right? So dark night of the soul is one of them. And if you've been a part of this community or been connected in any way to kind of the spiritualist movement or anything open to new age phenomenon, you've probably heard that phrase. And it comes from I believe it's a poem, maybe it was a book from the 16th century, a mystic called St. John of the Cross. And he wrote a book or poem, it may have been a really long poem, called The Dark Night of the Soul. And I love, when I was thinking of St. John of the Cross, that's my favorite imagery by Salvador Dali. If you've ever seen that, the image that he painted of Christ on the cross where it's like a horizontal, he's hovering over this kind of quiet lake with a boat. Anyways, side note, my brain went kind of tangented there, but when I said St. John of the Cross, there is a painting called St. John of the Cross by Dali. That's my favorite one. But that poem dark night of the soul references kind of a spiritual crisis point where you are in extreme depression, where bad things are happening left and right, where life is falling apart in our experiential life. The job, the family, the children, where we are experiencing extreme crisis points of the soul. And it brings us into the darkest point of our life, which is a pivotal turning point to bring us into essentially enlightenment or union with the divine. And it is in that point that it's said, in that dark night of the soul, that we are given the opportunity to basically clean and purge into that purity of the soul that is associated with the highest vibrational state of the Godhead, of, like I said, the glory of the divine, and have that sense of union or enlightenment of our being and our soul. And so when you ask that question about going through the dark night of the soul, which is typically the hardest points in our life, and sometimes there's more than one, sometimes they wave in. If we chose a life that was like a power punch life, like we're gonna get it done, and this, we mean business, and we come in to live to the fullest, then we may have multiple dark night of the soul experiences in our lives. Also, this kind of universal law takes into account energy and the fact that energy can neither be created or destroyed, right? That all energy that exists, all that can exist, does exist. And so that second part of your question kind of has an overlap or a sense of paradox, or how does that work when we are going through the hardest parts of our life and we're needing to release a lot of these negative emotions. The same with trauma therapy, or if you're going through a deep cathartic cry or a cathartic healing session in any type of session, and you're releasing a lot of negative emotion in those times in your life or those healing processes, where does that negative energy go? Does that negative energy have, like you said, the ability to boomerang back to you and come back? If you're sending out the negative, do you receive the negative back? Or are we able to release that energy once and for all? So I'm going to talk about a few different ways that energy can be utilized through a conscientious approach, right? And I love that you asked this question, because to me, it tells me that you are being thoughtful and conscientious about your level of creation and where that energy goes and how it's used. Similar to someone who finds out about all of the dumping, right, on the earth, and then becomes more aware and wants to recycle and wants to take care of what they're putting out. The same process is what you're talking about here. If we use that metaphor of like, what happens to the trash that I put out? If I'm trying to clear all this crap from my life, from my heart, and get clean and clear, what happens to all the trash? Doesn't somebody have to pick up that trash? Does that just come back to me in terms of the law of attraction? Am I just sending that out and then coming back in another form? Is there some way, shape, or form that can change and be transmuted or absorbed? So I want to talk about different ways that we are conscientious about our energetic debris or energetic trash, whatever you want to call it, what we give off when we are releasing deep clearing of energy. Now, this is for us as practitioners when you're working or helping someone through trauma release and shamanic healing and clearing, which is typically very, very deep on multiple layers of the persona or identity or lifetimes that are carried within various timelines, or within your own release, like you shared and asked the question about a dark night of the soul. The same would be true, because it's baseline just energetic awareness and how to manipulate. And by manipulation, I don't mean anything negative. I just mean the conscientious control and wisdom with your energetic awareness of what you are putting out there, just like the metaphor that I compared it to with physical trash. And once you become aware that trash can debilitate and create toxic waste and all of this negative impact in the environment, then you get very conscientious with how you want to handle a recycle program or composting, or how you handle that energy. So the same is true when you are clearing yourself or others. So if I didn't already say this, I feel like I should put this little caveat in the video and mention that it is so important for the soul to have expression and have clearing in order to have healing. You cannot put that negative toxic energy, especially from a major crisis point in the soul, back into the body. This becomes implosive energy. And if you're aware of how implosive energy works, it's so potent. I mean, this is like thermonuclear war weapons are made from implosive energy. It is incredibly powerful, potent energy, and when it goes off like a literal bomb, it will take everything with it. So this is keeping things secret, keeping things inside, refusing to release the thoughts, the memories, and it will literally create toxins in the body. It will create disease in the body. It makes us non-functional. It can make us forget parts of our lives. It can make our mind literally stop working or fritzing out. It is highly toxic to be implosive with this dark night of the soul energy. So all that being said, don't keep it inside. Don't shut your voice or your expression to this. Don't ruminate inside and then push the energy in. So one of the ways that we can be conscientious about our energetic release is through what we call transmutation. Now, if you're in this field of energy workers, shamanic healers, those of us that are familiar with how to shift and shape energetic capacity or kind of mold it and manipulate it, then you may be familiar with this term. But transmutation is basically like shifting the form that the energy shows up in, okay, or the use of that energy. And so we see this all the time in elemental healing. This is one of the things I love so much about going to the elementals as a shaman, because if you look at our natural world, this is a highly functional use of energy, shifting it from one form to the other through transmutation. If you look at the water cycle, for instance, we use the atmospheric change to shift the form that the energy presents itself, and it can be used in different modalities, right? So we have we learn the water cycle, when you're in kindergarten or first grade or something, where the water, changes form and it moves up into the atmosphere, and then we have clouds and we have rain and then all sorts back into the ocean, right? We've seen this cycle over and over. So that's an example of transmuting energy. Another elemental form of transmutation would be through the use of fire, right? Something that's material and a very carbon-based, it can be based in anything, but a very material base that is burned in order to purify and change the form of the energy. And then it moves into a smoke, it moves into, again, using the atmospheric change, so it transmutes into another form. And the same is true of these negative emotions. If we utilize elemental transmutation, for example, when you are releasing out the energy through tears, which is water, right? And it begins to dry up, but there's salt in there, so there's mineral components to it, and it does become a sense of elemental balancing through our literal carbon-based bodies, right? And the use of that is so primal, is so native. It's like our bodies know what to do, and the air itself knows what to do. It will literally pull like a wind, sucking that out of you at times. Sometimes when it feels like a punch in the gut when we have strong impacted trauma, or it will make us purge. It will make us physically throw up. This is a deep release in the dark night of the soul. And you're talking about dark night of the soul. So I'm talking about deep release. I mean, this is the pivotal points in our life when you can't get any lower. All right? That's where you're at. And those points, it is a deep transmutation when it is released out through cathartic tears, like crying, wailing, And they used to practice this. We used to have mourners in our ancient time, that was their practice, to teach people how to cathartically mourn and cry, the primal scream, all of these deeply cathartic and healing processes of transmutation, of basically moving the energy from the mind, from the body, the heart space, from the belly, wherever you're holding that energy of trauma or the dark night energy, and releasing it out through the mouth or through the tears or the vomit or the bile, or sometimes it comes out all the way out the body. And the material aspect of that, shifting form into another elemental, whether it is now in the air, whether it is now drowned out. This is why tears were also considered sacred, right? So essentially it is changing the material form through transmutation. Once it moves to another component, essentially the elementals take over for you with that energy, and they use it in a process that is beneficial for them. So this would be like, if I want to compare it to composting, like I use that metaphor of the trash, right? And so if you are wise with what you're doing with your trash, you put it in places where it feels like the soil will glean from all of the nutrients that are in your trash. The same is true of what we consider negative energy. It's highly potent and powerful energy for change. And so when it is put into, say, the earth, for instance, it can absorb, just like water, when it rains, is absorbed by the earth. It can be absorbed and used for very fertile soil. The same is true of volcanic soil coming from fire-based elementals, or burning or purging, right? This releases, and the elementals have a divine intelligence that knows what to do with what we consider to be negative energy in order to transmute them into something that is useful, that is highly creative and potent. And so essentially moving the energy into another form can shift and transmute in a positive way. And so essentially you flip that magnetic aspect when it comes to law of attraction, because you've used transmutation instead of just like attracts like. You've put it into another form. And elemental clearing, elemental healing, this is part of our natural primal intelligence of why we as humans are here and are integrated into the material and mineral world that we are. We are part of it. We are not immune to the aspects of our physical bodies dying off, our cells dying off, things that happen in a sense of cyclical manner that transmute energy, form, and shape. So using that energy and putting it into out of the body and then into an elemental, like I said, the earth. So essentially when you cry out and we're doing an elemental healing, I always encourage people to get on the floor, to get something to absorb the tears. It's simple as that. To get something to absorb the words. If you need to write it out and you put it on a page and then you burn the page, there's the fire purging and shifting and transmuting using fire, moving it into air. There is a true sense of being conscientious about where the energy is going and being deliberate about how you are using the transmutation to shift the form instead of just leaving it out there vacant. Another thing I want to talk about when it comes to releasing energy is that the healthy way of doing this does not have a projection on it. Meaning you are not saying, I hate this person. I'm going to put this evil energy on this person. I'm going to put this evil curse on this person that did something to me. There's no projection. There's no momentum onto another. And that is a healthy release and enables transmutation. If it is sticky, for all of you clairsentients out there that feel the energy, if it is sticky, it will have a component of projection to it. It will feel like mud, like slinging mud on someone. I love that expression because it's so true in terms of energy and reading energy. The same is true when you are slinging it on yourself. Self-worth issues. I shouldn't have done that. I knew better. I'm a horrible person. This is slinging mud on the self. This is projection on the self. And this is also a level of toxicity that makes it denser and harder to transmute the energy. We have to clear that first. clear that on a level that doesn't take a sense of personal ownership or judgment on another or on the self. So you have to release the level of judgment first, okay? Looking at it as it is and as base truth to truth as you can get. This was the situation. I did the best that I could, but now that I see it from this perspective, I probably would have done it differently, right? Get as truthful as you can with yourself. Break it down as base level. So this is what I call about breaking down the mud, okay? When we are slinging mud, either at another through judgment or at ourself through judgment, we cake up these like solidified senses of mud, and it looks like that to me in my clairvoyance, and a lot of times I can feel it like that. Or sometimes it looks like taffy or like bubble gum. It's like stringy. I try to pull it and it kind of whips back. Those patterns of energetic blockage that we create in our old, just the way that we deal with energy, whether we've dealt with it that way for eons through generational karma and trauma, or whether we've dealt with it like this since this lifetime, since we've had trauma and we begin to harbor or fear. Whatever reason we may be giving ourselves the slinging of mud or giving someone else the slinging of mud, the breakdown of that, just like breaking down dried mud, right? We crack it and then you kind of shake it loose, is getting truthful. So truth is the breaker. It's elemental, okay? And so you get as simple as you can with your truth statements, with seeing things as they are, okay? And you get very truthful with yourself, and you get very truthful with your statements of someone else, okay? As honest as you can. I just don't know what they were thinking when they did that. I just don't know what their upbringing is that made them think that was okay. I really don't know. That's a very truthful statement. Instead of, they should have known better, they should have done it this way, they are a bad person. We just don't know. Get very truthful. This is the breaking down of the mud. Once that mud is broken down, then you can move into a phase of transmutation, of that cathartic crying, of the primal screaming, of the physical hitting. So physical hitting is also really good, like where you used to, in the primal community or ancient community, we used to beat on our chest, our heart chakra, right? But the same is true if you beat on a pillow or a couch. I'm like pointing at my couch here. Essentially, it's a cathartic sense of movement through the body. If you box, I like to box, and kind of moving the energy external, and it's using the heat of the body to do the clearing. So the same is true, and that's available also through transmutation. So you're moving all of that energy out and utilizing air and shifting it through the transmutation cycle. And the earth and the elementals through the earth know what to do with the energy from there. They take it and they know what to do with it. There's a higher intelligence there that recalibrates the energy for usefulness. And that's my final point that I want to make about kind of releasing this energy, that you don't have to fear it coming back to you. The fear is more so what brings it back. If you trust in the intelligence that is moving you through this dark night of the soul, if you lean into that purity of the trust, the deeper and deeper and deeper you are centered in the self. It's not panicky, it's not chaotic, it's not fear-based. The externals kind of have that talk that's like, well, you shouldn't do that, or da-da-da, and this is this kind of external chaotic voice. The centering in during that dark night of the soul is very peace-giving, peace-inducing, and you feel your own core energy here, your core soul here. In that space, it allows also for a redistribution of energy. And there is a high level of intelligence here that's also working with that simply has entities, energies, minerals that absorb dark energy. That's literally what they do. And it's not in a space of judgment, not because they're evil or maleficent, not because they're bad entities, but because that is part of their makeup. That's just how they work. It's what they do. Take a black stone, for instance. This is an elemental, or a magnet, for instance, hematite, that's magnetically charged. Or tourmaline. I've talked about these black stones before, and I use them a lot in elemental healings, and I use them even just with myself. If I know that I'm clearing something, I'll tend to like want to lay and cry, and then I'll put the stones at my feet to absorb and drain all of that out of my veins, out of my bloodline, especially right underneath the Achilles heel, right there where the big vein runs out. But all of those stones have the natural innate ability to absorb dark and dense energy. They don't have to be cleared in the moon. They don't have to be recalibrated. This is what they are made for. And they're like, this is what I do. Here we go. Put me in, coach. And so there's no sense of fear about them taking or worry or concern, like, oh, I shouldn't give that rock my dense and my heavy energy. It's like it knows what to do with it. This is like the bacteria that feeds off of our toxic trash or our nuclear waste. There is literal bacteria that feeds off of that. And we don't look at that bacteria and we go, oh, you're a bad bacteria. We are grateful for that recycling program that a higher level of intelligence has put in place on this earth. And the same is true for the elementals. That cycle of using dark and dense energy for absorption in a lot of our mineral kingdom, as well as dark and dense entities. There are entities that feed off of fear. Now, you don't want to get them stuck or anything like that. You don't want to get them connected to you or attached to you. But this is oftentimes how people realize they're in that space, is because they feel like everywhere they go, there's this darkness, there's this cloud around them. A lot of times those entities and energies are feeding off of those people at that time, those times of sadness or deep depression. And be aware. It doesn't mean to move you into a place of fear, but if you're aware of your non-physical connections and your sense of multidimensional access, of course you're aware that, yeah, there's some pretty dark entities and energies that feed off of that. Again, just like bacteria that live under the earth and feed off of our nuclear waste, things that nobody else could go touch, they feed off of that. And we don't look at them in judgment. They are useful in their awareness. Now, they are not useful in some places. You would never want them in certain places, right? Because they would cause havoc. But they have usefulness if you are wise and intelligent about what to do with your energy, what's feeding off of it. And even in that awareness, when you are in a deep and depressed state, and I put myself in here too. I'm probably in a dark night of the soul every month when I'm PMSing. No, but I can get there. I can totally go there. And my awareness of my own process and my own moon cycles and my own emotional state, because I have a very passionate expression through life. And oftentimes that passion goes in both directions, up and down. And so with that sense of awareness, I know, yeah, I'm probably going to need to clear some entities and energies here if I want to get out of this, because they're feeding pretty heavy on me today. I can't get out of the bathtub. I just want to stay in the bathtub all day. Or whatever it may be for you. I'm speaking for me because I love my bathtub. It's my womb comfort space. But all that being said, that is a helpful awareness, even when you're in it, that I know what's feeding off of me. I know how to clear that and redistribute the energy. Now, redistribution is a little bit different from transmutation. It essentially puts the excess of a certain energy into where there are deficiencies. So these are the feeder spirits. So you look at an ocean, and when there's a flood in some side of the ocean, our ocean knows how to redistribute the mass of the water, right? And it feeds itself where it needs to be fed. And so in the kind of law of one and universal laws of our essence as one being, one body, there are areas that are deficient in some aspect of depression or fear. Remember, that's what we're calling them, that emotional. If you just get on the energy response or a certain frequency that we're hitting when we're depressed, if you just look at it from the scientific perspective, there may be areas in our cosmos that are deficient for that frequency. And there's a redistribution effect that happens when we clear it, and we are conscious of the fact that we are clearing and redistributing. Of what I have in excess, I send to where there are deficiencies. Okay? Now, that doesn't mean you're sending it to people who are super happy and now they get to be depressed. Okay? It means in the universe where that frequency is useful. That is the term. And I hear that all the time from Spirit, that this is good because it is useful. it is actually feeding in a way that we in our own human experience don't have perspective to understand yet. Just like like I said, bacteria that feeds off of certain waste. Just like some of our trash, when we compost it, becomes fertile soil for us. So there is an awareness when you are deliberate with how you want that energy to be transmuted or redistributed in ways that don't come back to you like a boomerang. Instead, they come back to you like a balancing effect or a clearing effect that moves into a sense of purity versus a sense of whiplash. So I hope that video was helpful to you guys. A lot of content there, great question. If you have questions for this YouTube channel and want me to do a video, just go to my website, go to the contact form, and you can fill out a little contact form giving me the question for YouTube, and it will get sent and put in the list here. I will see you guys back next week. Blessings.